Forget everything you think you know about deserts, because we're about to dive into the one place on Earth where a diamond-rich country, a history of peaceful self-rule, and the world's largest inland water delta exist side by side in one mind-bending national mosaic. That's just a little glimpse of Botswana for you. So if you want to dive deeper, keep watching, because we're unpacking everything there is to know about this beautiful country. Let's start our story tens of thousands of years ago, because before anyone else, this land was home to its earliest modern inhabitants, the Khoe and the San peoples. They've been here since the Middle Stone Age, living an incredible hunter-gatherer and pastoralist lifestyle. If you ever get to the Tsodilo Hills, you'll see evidence of continuous habitation from as far back as 17,000 BCE. They have these amazing click languages and are an absolutely integral part of this land's heritage. Now, fast forward to thousands of years, potentially around the 14th century, when a new group of people began to shape the region, the Botswana. The Botswana are the people who speak the Setswana language and share the Sotho-Tswana culture. And historically, they are generally believed to be descendants of a figure named King Mogal, who lived way down south in what is now the Magaliesberg Mountains in South Africa. Over time, different groups of the Botswana started migrating northwards, for various reasons, and at different times. They were essentially settling into a relatively less explored territory. And by the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the area we know as Botswana was home to at least 8 main ethnic chiefdoms, whose leaders are called the Digosi. Here's the cool part. These groups, while distinct, generally shared a common language and history, and for the most part, they coexisted in relative peace. But in the late 19th century, things started to get dicey, because this was the era of the scramble for Africa. The British Empire was consolidating its strength, and white settlers, specifically the Dutch Afrikaners and German settlers, were pushing hard, annexing Botswana territory. Imagine you're running a chiefdom, minding your own business, and suddenly you have 2 giant, heavily armed colonial powers closing in on you from different directions. What do? Well, the Botswana leaders were strategic. In the 1870s, 3 key Digosi, namely Khama III, Sebele I, and Bathoen I, made a formal representation to the British government. Their message was clear. All they wanted was protection. So, with some local British support, their strategy worked. Then in 1885, the British government agreed, and the territory became the Bechuanaland Protectorate. But wait, there's a twist. Initially, the chiefs resisted British rule. They only agreed to protection with the understanding that it would safeguard them against external threats. It wasn't supposed to be an invitation for the British to run everything internally. So for the next couple of decades under the Protectorate, there was a constant fight to prevent Bechuanaland from being incorporated into southern Rhodesia, or more threateningly, the Union of South Africa. But those smart and resilient Botswana Digosi, along with supportive missionaries and a growing group of Botswana nationalist leaders, stood firm. Their opposition continually defeated these attempts at annexation. Then, by the 1930s, the Botswana's desire for self-determination was becoming increasingly vocal. The push for independence was gaining steam, and a pivotal moment came in the 1960s. Constitutional talks began in 1963 and 1964, driven in part by the continued desire to avoid incorporation into South Africa. And who was in charge of all of this? It was a man named Sir Seretse Khama. He had been exiled by the British but returned to found the Bechuanaland Democratic Party, or BDP for short. In 1965, the seat of government moved from Mafikeng, which was inside South Africa, to the brand new capital of Gaborone. The first general elections followed, resulting in a landslide victory for Khama's BDP. And finally, on September 30th, 1966, after 80 years as a protectorate, Bechuanaland gained its full independence and became the Republic of Botswana, with Sir Seretse Khama as its first president. But hold on to your hats, because here's the kicker. At the moment of independence, Botswana was one of the world's most impoverished nations. Then, in 1967, a year later, they discovered a game changer: diamonds at Orapa. The country, under Khama's visionary leadership, chose the right path. They focused on clean government, peace, stability, and managing the revenue from these diamonds. This paved the way for the incredible economic prosperity that followed, turning Botswana into a true African success story. And this stability didn't stop with the first president. Since independence, Botswana has maintained an incredibly impressive streak. Sir Seretse Khama served until his death in 1980. He was succeeded by Sir Ketumile Masiea, who ruled for 18 years and then voluntarily retired in 1998. How rare is that in politics? He handed power over to Festus Mogae, who, in turn, handed power over to Ian Khama, Sir Seretse Khama's son, in 2008. Then Mogwitsi Eke Masisi took office in 2018 until 2024. For nearly 60 years, the Botswana Democratic Party has been in power, but the country has maintained a thriving democracy, a strong judiciary, and an admirable tradition of peaceful, voluntary handovers of power. So, from ancient Khoe-San hunters to shrewd Dikgosi, and from a British protectorate to a modern diamond-rich democracy, the history of Botswana is truly one for the books. But that's not the end of their story, because right now we're heading to a brand new territory. Botswana's geography. First off, Botswana is a landlocked country smack in the centre of southern Africa. It borders South Africa to the south and east, Namibia to the west and north, Zimbabwe to the east, and it even shares a tiny, crucial border with Zambia in the northeast. That tiny corner, by the way, is part of a famous area where 4 countries, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia and Zimbabwe, almost meet. But despite its location, Botswana is huge. Its total area is about 581,730 square kilometres, or 224,610 square miles. And just to give you some perspective, that makes it larger than France, but slightly smaller than the US state of Texas. It's the 48th largest country in the world, and despite its massive size, it's mostly a big, flat plain. And you want to know what the most important feature of Botswana's landscape is? It's the Kalahari Desert, which dominates 70% of the entire country. Now, when I say desert, don't picture the Sahara. The Kalahari is technically a semi-desert, or a bush savanna. It spans over 900,000 square kilometres, or 360,000 square miles, across 9 different African nations, and it actually receives enough rainfall to support a huge variety of life, including the incredible San people, who have lived here for thousands of years. But because rain is so precious and sporadic, and because the ground is covered in vast, deep sand, drought is a constant problem. But here's the unbelievable contrast that makes Botswana's ecosystem so unique. You have the arid Kalahari, right? And right next to it, you'll find one of the world's greatest natural water wonders. Botswana is home to the world's largest inland delta, the Okavango Delta. This is the place people dream of. It's a vast seasonal wetland that can cover up to 20,000 square kilometres, or over 7,700 square miles during the rainy season. What makes it so fascinating is that the Okavango River never reaches the sea. Instead, it flows from Angola and spreads out, meeting the Kalahari sands and creating a spectacular, mesmerising connection between desert and marshland. This delta is a haven for permanent and seasonal inhabitants, hosting a huge diversity of wildlife, including over 400 species of birds, along with lions, elephants, leopards, and crocodiles. Now, moving east from the Okavango, you find the Chobe National Park, a famous tree savanna region, where the Chobe River and the mighty Zambezi River converge in the north. This area is celebrated for having the largest elephant population in Africa. Then there's also the fascinating Makgadikgadi pans. These enormous salt pan areas are now vast, flat plains of salt and clay. During the dry season, they can seem completely lifeless, with only the hardiest creatures like ostriches surviving. But when the rains fall, everything changes. The pans briefly flood, attracting huge flocks of flamingos, and, most spectacularly, hosting the second largest zebra migration in Africa. Thousands of zebra, wildebeest, and other animals flock here from the Okavango Delta area to graze on the nutrient-rich grasses that spring up around the salt pans. It's a truly unforgettable sight if you get the chance to see it for yourself. At this point, we've seen the natural wonders, but now it's time to move from the safari to the State House, where a historic political earthquake just redefined Botswana's future. First, the politics. Botswana's always been known as a peaceful, stable place, but it just saw a massive shift. Because back on October 30th, 2024, they had elections, and for the first time in nearly 6 decades, the long-ruling party lost. The new guys in charge are a coalition led by President Duma Boko. It's historic, right? But he's stepping into a really, really tough economy. The biggest problem is simple. Botswana's whole country relies on one thing: diamonds. They make up over 90% of what the country exports. That's why 2024 was so rough. The economy actually shrank by 3%, and that's a huge tumble from the 3.2% growth they had in 2023. One of the reasons could be that the mining sector saw its output plummet by 24%, and you'll see this in the current GDP. The country had about $19.4 billion in 2024, but the World Bank is forecasting it to shrink slightly to around $19.26 billion by the end of 2025. Now, if the new government can get some big fixes going, things could bounce back and grow by more than 4% down the road. Right now, though, the money situation is tight. The government spent way more than it brought in, so the budget deficit ballooned to 7.1% of GDP for the 2024 to 2025 fiscal year. Public debt is now over 30% of GDP. Plus, the trade balance flipped completely. They went from having a 1.5% of GDP surplus in 2023 to running a 4.2% of GDP deficit in 2024. They've basically run down their savings to only about 5 months of import cover. On the bright side, inflation is behaving. It's hanging out around 2.1% in 2025, which is nice and stable. It's actually lower than the central bank's target range of 3 to 6%. So the Bank of Botswana has kept its main interest rate low at 1.9% since August 2024. However, to help the pula stay competitive, they deliberately let it weaken a bit. Since last July, the pula has dropped by 6% against the US dollar and 8.6% against the South African rand. Despite all the diamond wealth, you've got to remember Botswana is still dealing with big social problems. Unemployment is sky-high at 27.6%, and the extreme poverty rate is 13.5%. That's 4 times higher than in other comparable countries. So, what's President Boko doing? He's on a mission to get the economy back on its feet, starting with trade. He's pushing the US to scrap the 37% tariff on imports from Botswana and give them a 0% tariff deal instead. That'd be a huge win. Beyond that, the whole country's focus is on diversification, moving away from diamonds and into things like clean energy, big infrastructure, and financial services. Now, until the future, it's all about building a new economy that isn't just a diamond mine. The real wealth of Botswana, though, isn't in the ground. It's in the people who are busy building that future, the Botswana themselves. So when you talk about everyone in the country, you call them the Botswana. Their culture is this beautiful, resilient mix, deeply connected to the natural world. But who are these folks? While they all share that national Botswana identity, the population is mainly split into 2 big language groups: Setswana, or simply Tswana, and Ikalanga or Kalanga. The biggest players here are the Tswana people. They've got 8 major subgroups, like the biggest, the Bangwato, up in Sarowe, and groups like the Bagatla and the Bangwaketsi down south near Gaborone. But the country's a true mosaic, right? It's also home to big non-Setswana speaking groups. For example, the Bakalanga are the largest non-Tswana group, centred around Francistown. And then there's the Basawa, or the San people. They're believed to be the earliest inhabitants of southern Africa, and they still maintain their ancient hunter-gatherer existence, mainly in the central Kalahari. You'll also find the Herero and the Baye, who are expert boatmen in the Okavango Delta. This whole beautiful diversity is built on a central philosophy called botho. You might know it as Ubuntu. Think of it as the ultimate concept of respect, kindness, and compassion. It's the engine that drives social life, helping keep that strong sense of community and peace. Now, how does this all express itself? Through some amazing traditions, of course. Music and dance are massive here. You'll hear traditional drums and the marimba, with rhythm often kept by hand clapping and foot stomping. And dances tell stories. For instance, the Bangwaketsi perform the energetic satapa to celebrate a good harvest. And the Basawa dance? That's sometimes done in a trance-like state for healing rituals, with the men wearing cocoon rattles on their feet for that distinctive rhythmic sound. And the crafts? They're incredible. Women from the Hambakushu and Baye tribes in the Delta have been weaving sophisticated basketry for literally thousands of years. We're talking intricate work using makola, palm leaves, and natural dyes. And a single basket can take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to finish. It's slow, beautiful art that also helps support their communities. When you get hungry, you're in for some comforting traditional meals. The foundation of the cuisine is built on staples like maize, sorghum, and beans. You've absolutely got to try seswa. That's their delicious shredded meat. And pap, which is a maize porridge. So if you go visit, how do you fit in? Well, they're known for being incredibly approachable. When you meet someone, always offer a handshake. It's often a unique 3-part handshake, where you link thumbs briefly. Give it a try. And a quick tip. When you greet a man, say dumela ra, and for a woman, say dumela ma. Also, if you need directions, don't rush. Take a moment for a quick greeting before asking your question, as the pace of life isn't super urgent. Just learning to say dumela, which is hello, and kia leboga, or thank you, goes a long way. Finally, a quick note on respect. Botswana society is a little conservative in dress, so for women, skirts that fall below the knee are generally a good idea. And always ask permission before taking someone's photograph. And this respect for the people is echoed in the nation's respect for the land. It's this core value of environmental preservation that drives Botswana to protect incredible natural wonders, such as the Okavango Delta, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Their commitment to conservation ensures that visitors can still find the famous Big Five and witness a massive array of migratory birds in the wet season. Ultimately, the fusion of deep tradition, kind people, and a magnificent wild environment truly captures the spirit of Botswana. Now, you know the Botswana live by the philosophy of botho, or Ubuntu, a concept of deep respect and community. That said, I want to know, what philosophy do you live by? Whether that's the same or inspired by other cultures, sound off in the comments section below. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, you're going to love this next one.